Welcome back to a Boxscore Geeks Show. We've got some exciting stuff to talk about. Vegas released their over-under odds. Morey and Cuban are feuding. And don't forget, if you're an NFL fan, you may now actually be able to watch the games you enjoy. All that and more on tonight's Boxscore Geeks. You guys enjoy that? It's going to be something I try and do. On that note, something we're really excited about is we're actually going to try and go to a live show in the not too distant future. If you notice all the production value Brian Foster has added, apologies, I didn't even introduce ourselves. So I'm Andres Alvarez, aka Nerd Numbers. And as I mentioned, we have a producer named Brian Foster. Say hey, Brian.
Oh, what's up, Dre? I'll let you spoil, some of the potential upgrades we're going to do, but I'm really excited for this show. Some good off-season and kind of economics topics before we really get heavy into the upcoming season.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, when Brian came over as a producer, one of the exciting things we were hoping to do was actually a live show. And we've been pushing a lot towards that. That's why we have the overlays. We've got some upgrades and stuff planned to those, like Brian mentioned. So, but yeah, we're looking to do a live show in the near future where basically every week at the same time, we come to you live with the topics, very similar to what we've got. We'll give you the audible version when we're done in podcast form. So I want to throw that out to you first off. We'll probably have a poll, something, or you can just say in the comments. Would be interested to know what days of the week are best for you if you were going to listen to a live show and what times. Brian and I are constrained by the fact that we work, so it's probably going to be an evening show. Unfortunately, we may have me with the game on in the background while it's going on, so you can hear me curse at my Nuggets. But that's the plan, and we thought we'd let you know. And so we'll be planning to go towards that, and we'll keep you in the loop. And we are excited about the prospect of a weekly live Boxscore Geeks show.
I do want to add one thing to that, Dre. The reason why I approached you guys in the first place to do this show is for doing a live show. The reason why it's so cool is because, if you guys that watch the show regularly, you can see all the hosts talking about stats and then kind of see maybe some stats in the background if you're someone that watches the video version. Well, now all the hosts will be able to watch what everyone's watching at the same time, talk about the same stats at once. That'll be really cool, so I'm excited for that.
Well, yeah, if you're watching right now and you just saw something stuck in my teeth and I was like trying to subtly get it out, I don't think I succeeded. And yeah, we've had a few of those shows, Brian, which are fun where you'll have a graphic or a chart or something up and we're discussing it. And we kind of just have to pretend it's like a green screen thing, right? Where we're kind of pretending we know what's there, or we're all trying to subtly glance down at our computer screens. So it is exciting that can go live. And then, of course, we can tie things in like we love interacting with you on Twitter. And YouTube has support for chatting back. So it would be exciting to, actually have interactive shows. My opinions on comment sections. So we'll see if we get the call-in portion of the show ever going, but it's certainly a possibility. So with that in mind, we do have a few off-season topics, although we can feel the regular season approaching. As I mentioned, the over-under is our last topic. The first one I want to talk out, Brian, you just sent this to me, and it's not a real story in my opinion, but it's funny, which is the Morey Cuban feud, which is amazing. So the Dallas Mavericks and the Houston Rockets have basically started, it's turned into, would you call this a rivalry? It's turned into an all-out quant rivalry is what I'd call it.
Well, it's definitely a regional kind of, will of consciousness kind of battle.
But I'm saying, like, it's interesting because this is slowly escalated over years where you have two teams that are kind of known for using advanced stats. I'll do this to both teams. I've seen good, I've seen bad, but, more good than bad. I'll say it that way. And I'm a big fan of Mark Cuban and Daryl Morey. But you've now got this last offseason is where it really escalated, where both teams were going after free agent hard. This has happened 2 years in a row, right? Both teams were really after Dwight Howard. This season, of course, everybody was after LeBron. And, in the offseason, Daryl Morey, this is a case of him failing where he let Chandler Parsons out of his restricted free agency to free up cap space with the hope of signing a big free agent name and then hopefully re-signing Chandler Parsons. Of course, Chandler Parsons, I have no complaints with this, went to the Mavericks and got signed for a huge payday. Now, there are two caveats on this. I think that contract was overpriced. But as Arturo keeps bringing up, when the NBA's CBA goes into effect, basically the basketball related income goes up, and that means that Chandler Parsons' contract may actually be reasonable. And if we look at the Mavs books going forward, they're looking to get really shed of a lot of contracts. So basically, the Mavericks are basically saying we can get Parsons and then add more people in addition. And I can't really fault that move. So they got into a fight over Chandler Parsons. Then, of course, the Mavericks' Dirk Nowitzki was, I guess, coveted is the word by the Rockets. I don't think there was any hope that he was going to sign with the Rockets, and now they're, sniping back and forth. You sent me a Yahoo piece and something neither of us noticed on first read through, but one quote I want to read out loud to point something out here is Daryl Morey said, "We're no different than other teams. We have a core of two players, Dwight Howard and James Harden. Should have been Chandler Parsons too, Daryl Morey, just saying, who we are going to build around and never trade. San Antonio has a core of three guys that they've done an unbelievable job of building around." Kind of a diss there to Kawhi Leonard, sorry, but whatever. Making a lot of changes around that core. We had McGrady and Yao Ming and made changes around them. I'm going to get back to that point in a second. And Marks had a core of one, Nowitzki, who was there since before he bought the team. I want to just give that a bam because he's basically saying to Mark Cuban, your team is successful because of Dirk Nowitzki. You had nothing to do with Dirk Nowitzki. That's brilliant. I love this feud. What I will say is when Daryl Morey became GM of the Rockets, he inherited McGrady and Yao. So basically, I don't give him, it's the same kind of point there. But both these guys have now built 50 plus win teams. Both use a lot of analytics, and they're in a full out feud. I think a tweet I made this week is that if the NBA was smart like the WWE and had their own network, then basically the Rockets Mavericks feud would be its own reality TV show, and I would tune in every week. So did want to give that some attention. Thought it was funny. Excited to see where it goes. It is interesting, though, by the way, something Mosey Platt has brought up. Really, the only of those two teams, the only team that's done a really good job of signing top free agents is the Rockets. The Mavericks usually trade into theirs. Jason Kidd, Tyson Chandler, those players they had to trade for. I don't know why, and it's very confusing to me. And I really wish they would tell me because to me it seems like a no-brainer if you're a free agent that Dallas is a great place to go. They've shown tremendous loyalty to Dirk. They love analytics. They're in a good market. So I'm really confused why more free agents aren't as excited about them. But that being said, we'll have to see where that feud goes.
Dre, I'll prod you a little bit on Parsons. You're saying he should have been, there at their core still. Do you think Ariza may have been an upgrade? I think he's not necessarily younger. He might be a couple years older, but better defender. What do you think about Ariza versus Parsons?
For first off, you always we have fun with the defense part where I just don't know on that, right? Like I think we get into discussions about defense and it's hard to know. And actually, I'm going to correct myself. So good job prodding. Terrence Jones is looking pretty good, and I think he's still on the team. Apologies if I'm wrong.
I believe they held on to him, but I'm not sure. He might have been part of those moves.
So Terrence Jones is still on the Rockets power forward. So, basically they're looking fine there. I didn't like them getting rid of Ashik, but they basically were pretty clogged up in their bigs, basically Howard, Ashik, and Jones. So, more power to them. Actually, I agree with you. I do think Ariza is an upgrade for the price they got him at versus the price of Chandler Parsons. So one of the things we've been critical on the Rockets before is like I was mad at them for letting go of Kyle Lowry. But of course, afterwards, they turned those picks into Dwight Howard and James Harden, and you go, all right, it turned out for you. So there's another case where I think letting Parsons go when they could have had him for super cheap next year was a mistake. It ended up working out for them that, basically, what is it? The Wizards let go of Ariza needlessly. So there you go on that angle. So way to prove me wrong immediately, Brian. That's why we have fact checkers and producers on the show. So I'm going to agree with that. And I think going forward, I'm a little more excited about the Rockets, but I really want to see what the Mavericks are going to do when they basically get all the flexibility in the world when the CBA just blows up for them. So
yeah, I'm putting you on the spot here, of course. I also like picking Beverly over Lynn, of course. Advanced stats people will think that's a good move, but you have to think bringing Chandler back, assuming he's healthy, is a great move for the Mavericks and may improve them a lot more than anything the Rockets have done.
Well, absolutely on Beverly. And, Lynn, like that's the thing is you look at the Rockets, and this is a lot of teams, by the way. We're going to talk about one of these later. Wow, we're way off track. But basically, when you look at teams that use analytics, I still don't think there is a team other than the Spurs that has it figured out 90% plus. And so you see teams do good things and you see them do foolish things, and it's does the good outweigh the bad? I think with the the Rockets and Mavericks, the good has definitely outweighed the bad, but I still see questionable like head tilt moves. Like I think signing Lynn in the first place, instead of keeping Lowry or who was the player they let go to Goran Dragic around, was interesting. So I still think there's room for improvement in those organizations, is how I'll put it. Now, next topic, not really related. I probably should have put this one first and that Cuban one second, but what are you going to do? So I think last week I discussed digital rights. That was just kind of an on the fly topic we decided to go for. And one of the things I briefly mentioned was blackout restrictions. I am not a fan of blackout restrictions. If you're a sports fan and you don't know what this is, basically there are a few rules. The rules say if the local stadium doesn't sell out, they can basically prevent television from airing the game. And then additionally, like for me with things like NBA League Pass, MLB, I think it's called League Pass as well. If a game is in my market and it's on national TV, I'm not able to see it, which is very frustrating. So basically, in both of these cases, their goal is to push me towards either going to the game in person or watching on cable instead of using something else. And these drive me bonkers. And so a major thing just happened, which is the NFL's blackout rule by the FCC was just shot down. They basically said the NFL can't enforce its blackout rule, basically saying if the game doesn't sell out, they can't air the game on local television. And that is huge. Although, Brian, as you've already done once on this show, you brought up another stick in the mud on it, which was a Forbes article, which basically said, yeah, in theory, this is good, except for this to mean anything, the major, I'm going to read the last paragraph of this Forbes article, which we'll have linked. However, given the high value of the NFL's broadcasting rights, it's 3 years into a 27 nine-year deal with Fox, NBC, and CBS, and the league's high viewership numbers, 205 million fans tuned in during the 2013 season, the cost of doing so outweigh the benefits. Thus, if fans in San Diego and Buffalo want to guarantee seeing their team's home games, the best plan of action, even after today's FTCC decision, is to buy tickets and head to the stadium. So basically what this is saying, sorry, and I left out the first part, is the television stations that are making lots of money and get lots of viewers would have to basically tell the NFL, we're going to air these games in spite of you. And if that's the case, the NFL could basically pull the plug on their, giving them the games. And if that's the case, it may not happen. So just because it is now legal to air the games does not mean stations will be lining up to do so, because they're already connected. And this was kind of what we were talking about with Bill Simmons harkening back. ESPN has a $15 billion deal with the NFL, which means they're not in a position where they want to basically tick off the NFL. So even though legally now local stations can show the games, monetarily they may be disincentivized to do so. From my perspective, though, I don't see why the NFL doesn't want them to air the games. It seems to me, if you look at all of these stadiums, even NFL, I'm going to try and cheat really quick and look up so you know, not Coors Field, Mile High, not even Mile High Stadium, Pepsi Center. What is the name of it's Invesco Fields. Wow, you just saw me flounder on stage again. But Invesco Field capacity, which is, the home of my Denver Broncos, let's see, it holds about 76,000 people. Well, there are millions of people in the Denver metro area, not to mention the fact that, the Broncos, there's a great chart, and I'll have to look this up, that shows fandom across the United States for, which team they're going to root for based on where they live. And, states that don't have a team like Wyoming are going to be fans of the Broncos. So there are millions of people that could be tuning into these games versus, thousands of people that could be going to the games. It seems to me you'd want to be focusing on the television digital rights area instead of on getting people into the stadium. But this all harkens back to the point you bring up. It's the owners of the teams that want to make the money, and they make the most money from ticket sales because even television contracts are distributed amongst all the teams. So what are you going to do? Anything to end that on, Brian? And we can go to the most exciting topic last.
No, I wasn't as educated on this one. I mostly just wanted to know what you had to say about it. And, as to your last question, well, maybe the way to do it then is revenue sharing for that as well. But of course, the rich teams will never agree to it, so it's not going to happen.
Well, they already have some revenue
Oh, do
sharing,
they?
but even then, like, and even to those teams, I tell them, like, the Lakers, for instance, have, I believe, their own rights to the Lakers in the Los Angeles area, and those values are huge. But even then, the question for the teams is, are they trying to get the, NFL tickets are pricey. Do they think they can get more money there than selling sorry, to local television places? And then not only that, not all teams are in great television markets. So it's not as if the rights are necessarily that valuable either.
Yeah, I hate saying this on a show like this, but intuitively, it does seem like whatever money they could lose from blackouts is just so tiny compared to digital rights or whatever else they could gain from showing that. So it seems like one of those old school bad business strategies that is lingering around. Reminds me of the music industry and how they go out of their way to ban their artists from getting their song out there. It seems like whatever money they lose from sales, could be pretty bad compared to the promotion they're losing. But anyway,
Well,
we should move on from this. We should move on.
actually, we've got a little more time, but I mean, to that point, what you're saying, my problem with the music industry, and iTunes showed what could have been, is that the reason, and I remember I did pirate a lot of music when I was in high school, which was right when Napster got big, was that if I wanted a song, the singles got a lot more popular. Albums in like the 70s used to be a bigger deal. You listen start to finish. But, 80s with MTV basically made the single really valuable, which is I want to listen to one song. Well, if I wanted to get that one song, the old routes where I could go buy a CD with 15 songs on it, for most artists, most of these songs weren't good, right? They basically said, we need to release an album. So you've got 2 songs that are on the radio everybody loves. Just give us enough songs to make an album. We'll charge, 10 to 15 bucks for it. They'll only buy it for the 2 songs. Fine. Additionally, they'd have singles, but singles still had the same weird thing where they had multiple songs on the track. And so if I wanted to just get a single song, that was really obnoxious. Then this new thing came along when like faster internet came, which is I could just go to a site and say, I want to just get this one song on my computer and I would like to get it in 15 minutes. I don't want to get in a car or get on a bus and go to a CD shop. And that was a game changer. And iTunes now that I'm an adult, iTunes, Amazon have made it so I'm like, yeah, I want to watch a TV show. I'm just going to go to Amazon and find that show and pay $1.99 or $2.99 for that episode. I really like the song. I'm just going to go to iTunes and buy that song. But for the longest time, that infrastructure wasn't in place. And basically, they let this black market get really, really big and, really, really technologically savvy while they were in the dark ages. And so for me, the lucky part sports have is they don't have that issue, right? I can't make a black market NFL game in the middle of nowhere. But from the same perspective, they're just really behind the times on technology where they could make a digitally streaming game both really enjoyable and then profitable, easy to get. I'm perfectly willing to pay, a certain amount of money. The $2.99 for a movie is pretty standard already. So, you basically list that as 2 movies and say, yeah, pay us $6 to $10 if you want to stream this game. If you want really good angles or whatever, you pay more. I mean, go for that. But it's not easy. That's what I'll give them. That's a technology change. That's a paradigm shift. People in charge tend to stick with what they're comfortable with. And so I can totally see why they're not excited to do it and probably won't, but it's something I wish were there. All right. Now, on that note, dessert. The Vegas odds for the over-under for the season came out. Every year we have gone to Vegas. Last year we made some money. The year before, I believe Patrick made some money as well. So basically, this is always an exciting thing because, as I mentioned, previews for the season are coming up. I'll have some thoughts on that in the shout-out section. So anyway, we'll link it. And I think, Brian, you have the VegasInsider.com story open with the...
It is up as we speak.
All right. So Patrick shouted this out this week, and we had a few teams to discuss, and I'll give my thoughts on a few more. So Patrick, of course, the very first thing he did when he put this out was to talk about the T-Wolves. The T-Wolves and the Cavs are, of course, the most obvious teams in terms of swaps. The T-Wolves are now listed at an over-under of 25.5, and the Cavs, I believe, are 58.5. I'm jumping back and forth between tabs. Yeah, 58-5. So no shock there. Obviously, getting LeBron and Love to the Cavs is why they shot up. Losing Kevin Love, thank you for giving him the respect, is why the T-Wolves went down. But Patrick made the simple point that if we look at Gorgie Jang, let me see if I hope I said that right. But I'm going to get that up in front of me. Wow, how is this organized? I'm looking at the box score geeks, and I think it's organized by team name, but then we list the city in front, so it's a little jarring. Sorry about that. But basically, Gorgie Jang only got 3.4 wins last season, but at the same note, I think his per minute was just amazing. So let me get this sorted in front of me. I should have had this prepared. I apologize. But he was a star player. So if he picks up some of Kevin Love's minutes, they'll be fine. Also, as you know, Patrick has given his logic. Losing JJ Barea, I believe they lost Corey Brewer. So they've lost some bad players. They have some good players returning. They basically have a shot. And then they have some young players, Anthony Bennett and Wiggins. The one advantage, I'm going to say they have upside. What I mean by this is not that I'm confident on them. What I mean is anytime you have young players in the NBA, these players have upside because we don't know what their ceiling is yet. When you get a 26-year-old player, you're pretty much, that's what you got. That's what you're going to get. But when you have Wiggins, we have no way of knowing he won't be another Drummond. It's a mystery box. So that team's got some potential. And so there is hope that they'll be above 26 wins next season. So we're, tentatively bullish on them for now. Another team that's, this has been one of those teams that just perennially bites us is the Atlanta Hawks. So basically, we were really high on this team last year. We were really, really excited when they picked up. Man, I apologize, Brian. This is just me today, but I am apparently just a little out of it because I keep dropping names. But, we were really excited when they picked up Paul Millsap. So we thought they were going to do well. And then, of course, they basically were just wrecked by injuries. Al Horford went down. They kept losing players. So this season, we think they're better than a 41-win team, but a lot of that's going to be on Al Horford. So if he comes back healthy, no brainer, this team goes up. This was an interesting one, and I'd be curious on your opinion here, Brian. Patrick thinks that 59 wins essentially for the Cavs seems low. He thinks they're easily above a 60-win teams. But as he points out, and I have a piece, and I'll talk more about this in the shout-out section, the problem is minutes. And so he's basically saying, yeah, they seem better than a 59-win team, but we have no idea at the end of the season how that team's going to look. Are LeBron James and Kevin Love going to be coming off the bench if they, guarantee the number one spot 3/4 of the way through the season? So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think over/under 59 on Cavs is high or low?
I'm going to wait to say anything official until I see some numbers. However, I will take a guess. I would say it's probably low. I'll go with Arturo's theory here, which is that LeBron can keep the bad coaching in line. He can prevent waiters from getting too many minutes maybe and taking too many bad shots as sort of a coach on the floor. So I'll say they're all healthy and they'll go over 59.
And I'm not giving a prediction here. I want that clear. I just want to know what's going to happen with Kyrie Irving. I'm afraid he'll do the Westbrook route. I mean, Westbrook basically has said, I don't give a damn how good the shooting is around me. I'm going to take 20 plus shots a game. And he's gotten away with that because his teammates are really good. So Ariza's listed for the Rockets here. Patrick said the exact same thing you did about Ariza, by the way. So anyway, but Kyrie Irving on the Cavs, he's in the position where he can just keep shooting a lot. And if he's getting more than 20 points a game on this team, people are going to think he's great. On the other hand, it's entirely possible that LeBron James and Kevin Love coming in, he doesn't have to take those bad shots. He actually maybe turns into a better ball distributor. Who knows? So I think one thing I'll say, and Patrick's basically saying this as well, once you get in that 60-game region, it gets really rough because you don't know how that team is going to act at the end of the season based on their playoff situation. And the East is one of those places where I think the Cavs are, barring injury, the obvious number one seed out there. And I think that will be apparent very close to the All-Star break. So as a result, we don't know how they're going to end the season out. Now then, go ahead.
Oh, I don't have too much on that. Marion is a big key for them as well. with his age, he could drop off a cliff at any moment. But if he gets a lot of minutes, he's actually been pretty good the last few years.
Yeah, he's been consistent. It's been really weird to see some of these older players that stay relevant. I mean, he's not what he was at a young age, and so that's the key. We're not saying Marion now is Marion 10 years ago, but that said, he's been a solid, productive player. And this could be one of two things. This could be a Gary Payton scenario where Payton joined the Los Angeles Lakers and didn't really help them out that much. Or, it could be a Ray Allen scenario. Ray Allen, I can't recall if Ray Allen signed officially yet or not, but it could be a Ray Allen scenario too, where he's
So
older.
Ray Allen could be a Ray Allen scenario this year, even.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Has Ray Allen officially signed with the
I don't
Cavaliers?
believe so, but I don't know. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah. Currently, if you look him up on Google, because he hasn't signed with a team, it's going to list him primarily as a movie star in He Got Game. It's a good movie, by the way. So on that note, the next team that Patrick lists, and this is what you were saying, is the Rockets. And basically, he says he thinks Ariza Chandler is a wash. Ariza may actually be better than Chandler, to be honest. And so he goes, does losing Ashik and Lynn cost them that many wins? As you already said, Brian, I agree. Beverly is definitely the better choice than Lynn. So I don't think losing Lynn hurts them at all. I mean, the candid truth is in the NBA, if you are a stat savvy team, losing an average player should not cost you more than a few wins. And that the reason being, you should already have rookies in the works or draft picks in the works that are set to start replacing them, or you should be able to pick up an underrated free agent. So losing Lynn can't hurt them that much. Ashik would have hurt, except as we just mentioned, Terrence Jones was absolutely amazing last year. And so if Terrence Jones just keeps getting the minutes, basically losing Ashik doesn't cost them anything. So in terms of the Rockets, we think they're above the 50 win team. One thing I'll just repeatedly keep saying is once you hit that 50 win mark, and once you talk over anything over 50 wins, 55, 60, it gets really difficult because if you're a team that's great like that, it is really easy for things to fall apart for you. All it takes is an injury to Dwight Howard or James Harden, and that season can get derailed. And so I'm always a little more skeptical on that, although it's gonna sound like I contradict myself immediately on the next team. But that's all I'll say there is it seems a lot easier to pick the under than the over. And the only team that's really been a major exclusion on that would be the Indiana Pacers, and I don't know what's in the water there.
I hate to delve into math, Dre. This is not my strength, but is this a normal distribution for NBA win records? So getting those last few for the very top teams is even harder. Because I heard a similar comment about the 76ers, why picking the over on them could be good. It's just that hard to be that bad. It's really difficult to do.
That's what we said last year. And I mean, we'll even say that this year. I mean, the candid truth with last year is the Sixers blatantly tanked in a way I have not seen done as effectively, which is remarkable. I mean, they literally, and you look at this year, right? They traded for another second round pick essentially, right? When they picked up, I think it was Keith Bogans. But this team just kept stripping all of its players away for picks to the point by the end of the season, they were that bad and they weren't trying to win. They had no incentive to try and win because basically, their fans know they're not a good team. And the only reason I was behind it is they're stockpiling assets. The last question is how are they going to spend those assets? So that's where we give it to them. So the one thing being, they were that bad. They were as bad as you'd think. They were that bad because they were trying to be that bad. As Arturo had mentioned, there would be several games where they'd be strong after 3 quarters, and in the 4th quarter, it got shut down. So they were very explicitly tanking. But the other part is they still lucked into wins throughout the season. So it's one of those, being that bad is ridiculously hard. And, if you believe in some growth to some of the younger players, they might have hope. Although, what I was going to say here, let me pull up last year in front of them if you're not doing the same already. Well, I have to scroll down really, really far to get the 76ers, of course.
Yeah, so, I've got them up on screen as well. Not a lot of wins produced last year. It's true.
Yeah, but I mean, they lost with Spencer Hawes, Thad Young. Geez, this team. I mean, they don't have winners on that team, but even just some aging to Michael Carter Williams could do a ton. And, if Nerlens Noel plays, that could be huge too. So I think the over is probably wise on that. And yeah, I mean, that's to what you're saying, right? If the over under was 66 wins, so few teams get over 66 wins in the history of the NBA. You can just say this is really hard to get to. And the same is really true on the under. And yeah, all I'll say to those 2 points, right, is once you get below a certain number of wins and once you get above a certain number of wins, I'd pretty much put the 25 win and the 50 win range. It starts to get a little interesting because just minor shifts can change those things rapidly. Now, there are two teams I want to talk about, three teams I want to talk about actually to end this off on. And the first is going to be the Spurs. And one question I'll ask is, what do they need to do to get some respect? And I haven't put myself in this boat. Like last year, I wasn't excited about talking about the Spurs or betting on them or anything because I basically said, hey, it's really, what I just said, right? I'm like, they're predicting them as a really high win team. It's really hard to know what to do with that. But here's the point. The Spurs are listed as a 56.5 win team. That's the over under on them, I believe. Is it 56.5 or 56.5? Here's just some trivia for you. They have not failed to win fewer than 58 games in any of the past 4 seasons. That is ridiculous. And so what I'll also tell you, and you can kind of hear me typing because I'm about to do a little bit of math, but another thing to consider is they are not a normal team, and this is really shocking to me. They last year did not play any of their starters more than 36 minutes. Actually, let me get the exact stats in front of me. So last season, the San Antonio Spurs in the regular season did not have a starter who started more than 30 minutes a game in the regular season. And in the playoffs, I'm going to get this up in front of me as well. Sorry, I just got to go down a little. And in the playoffs, they did not have a player that played more than 33 minutes a game, and that player was Tim Duncan. This doesn't happen. This is not historically normal. The San Antonio Spurs have built one of the deepest squads and most balanced squads in NBA history. There's a book called Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb, where he basically talks about how having things like redundancies and things that when something breaks you, you actually get stronger can be a huge edge. The Spurs are one of these teams where you can take out any starter and they have someone on the bench that can come in and maybe even perform well. And they're always drafting great new talent and signing good free agents. So this is a team where I just think betting the under almost seems mean because history has said they're going to hit it, and their roster says they have the players. So this is one of the few teams where they're above that 55 win mark. I think it might be right on with what they're saying, but I still think they're one of the few safe bets in the NBA. Now, to be fair, any NBA team could just have a run of injuries, right? They could have injuries to their entire starting lineup and turn into a 40 some odd win team. That's entirely possible. But I'm just saying it's interesting that lack of respect to returning champions who have not failed to hit that mark any of the last 4 years.
I'll throw out a wild speculatory theory similar to the MVP voting fatigue theory, which is guys like LeBron James should win every year but don't because voters get bored. Maybe everyone knows the Spurs are a good team and they've been winning. They know what they're about. They know these guys are going to get old. And although I'll agree with you, I don't think that's true. They keep reloading. But this is what I'm saying the theory is. They're going to get old and go away pretty soon. So we've talked about them all we can. There's nothing more interesting to say about them. Let's look at these new up-and-coming teams that have new narratives.
Yeah, but I mean, even to this point, my point is that this is Vegas. This isn't a voter. This is a place that's trying to set the line to optimize betting.
Fair
And
enough.
they're saying that they're okay giving bettors that know the Spurs are great that win or two of leeway. And that's interesting to me. We'll see if that line moves. So anyway, the last two teams I want to talk are the Charlotte Bobcats and the Indiana Pacers. So I was actually a little surprised to see on the Bobcats, they're ranked at 45.5 wins. And last season they actually were, I don't remember if they had a winning record or if they were in the 40s. So I don't recall if they were a small winning or a slight winning. Let me just get that in front of me. So Charlotte Bobcats, 43 win team. Lance Stevenson is a huge boon. They did lose their best player, right, who was, I think, Josh McRoberts. But they picked up Marvin Williams, who's at the very least an average player and has shown in the past flashes of goodness. And I think me get this in front of me. So Marvin Williams, he's not, he's a high schooler was the thing. So I thought he was older than he was. He's only 28 years old. So, we've got this case here where I actually think the Bobcats are in better shape than that. And a huge part of that is Lance Stevenson, who I think is just an underrated coup to get. So I was surprised there. And on that note, the Indiana Pacers, I think, are right for the wrong reasons, is what I think. I think what some of the guys said, which is, obviously the loss of Paul George and Lance Stevenson really hurt him, but I don't think the voters realized Lance Stevenson hurt him. It's a shame because I would have really loved to have seen the over-under on this team if Paul George had stayed healthy, because I really would have wanted to take it and then laughed all the way to the bank, or possibly gotten laughed on when another random player turned into a star, because that's what keeps happening in Indiana. But no, Lance Stevenson to the Bobcats is an interesting thing, and I think the Bobcats are definitely underrated as a result. And I think that the Pacers are correctly rated, but that's only because people are afraid of, Paul George, and maybe remembered them in the playoffs. Because if you recall in the playoffs, Roy Hibbert just disappeared. So I think the thoughts on that team are correct, but it's another one of those for the wrong reasons. And I've got some thoughts on that in shoutouts. So I think I'm actually good talking here, because I'll talk a little bit more about when I'm talking projections and predictions right after shoutouts when we talk a few more things. So anything you'd want to add, any over-under team you got to say on that, Brian?
I don't have anything more. I'm excited for the predictions to come out so we can match those with Vegas.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about that in a second. All right, well, let's end happy first. Let's go to our shoutouts. This was a clever one. I forgot to send you the link. I apologize, Brian. So if you look this up quick, Jonathan Weiler, his computer was actually down during the Bill Simmons suspension thing. So I'm gonna call a controversy there. That's very interesting timing. I think someone from ESPN may have sabotaged Jonathan Weiler's computer when Simmons got suspended. But that said, he came back strong. Computer got fixed. He talked about the Bill Simmons suspension. More importantly, he talked about concussions at Michigan. And this is something Jonathan is really good at pointing out, which is when basically public figures that are part of the NCAA, ESPN, any of the sports leagues come out and talk to us and basically just say bold-faced lies. And he calls them on it. And he's basically like, this player at Michigan got a concussion. He should not have been on the field. It is perfectly unacceptable for anybody that was on that team on the sidelines to claim they didn't realize he should have been taken off the field. I believe even during the broadcast of the game, the announcers were like, get him off the field. Good God, he shouldn't be playing. So this is just unacceptable. And, I saw a tweet today where someone was talking about players having the option to get educations when they go to these schools. Basically, if the players go to these schools on a scholarship and don't get an education, it's their own fault. And I said, there is nothing kind of just more perfect to show how little the NCAA cares about players' brains than stuff like the recent concussion issue. So Jonathan Weiler, great posts on it. We'll link them. And, he gets a shout out. I actually joked on Twitter. I said, maybe we just need to give Jonathan Weiler a lifetime achievement shout out, because we seem to give him one every other week. And his response was, he's fine just taking the weekly shout out. So I guess you'll just have to get used to us always shouting out Jonathan Weiler. The ESPN watch, he's at John Weiler on Twitter. Must follow, must read, one of the best writers out there. And he's one of your normal shout outs too anyway, Brian. We got two other shout outs. These are actually going to be in industry. The first is Dean Oliver. If you haven't seen, Dean Oliver is headed to the Sacramento Kings. What I'll say here is I have been critical of the Kings in the past. This last season, the last couple of years, since Vivek Ranadive took over the team, none of their moves have impressed me as a stats guy. You now have one of the best stats people in the business on staff. Sacramento, you have no excuse. If I see silly moves next season, if I see bad contract extensions, I am going to be extra critical, because you have a Silicon Valley tech guy that claims he re-understood basketball for his daughter's team to make them a winner. You have the best stats guy in the business, one of the most respected. You're in an okay market. You have no excuse not to turn that team around in a season or two. And if you don't, I'm just going to be critical and basically kind of say I'm giving up on the idea of you moneyballing it, because you have all the advantages you need to moneyball it. On that note, Brian, you're a Bay Area person. You said you were watching this game. It was rough, but the Oakland A's fell to the Kansas City Royals in overtime, extra innings, whatever you want to call it. And thus, we get to add another chapter to the narrative of yes, the Oakland A's are good at analytics, but they just don't have what it takes to win a title. And I just want to give a shout out to Billy Beane. I thought he put together a great team, obviously a playoff worthy team. We were talking about this pre show, Brian. The Kansas City Royals and the Oakland A's in regulation basically tied on win loss record. So as a result, they're basically a playoff team. It's just because of the rules of the playoffs, they didn't make it in. And, they did some great moves towards the end of the season. Some of the trades Billy Beane made for new pitchers, I heard people on Twitter basically saying he'd guaranteed himself a title. So it's just another case of small sample size can just, make you unlucky. And so Billy Beane, keep up the great work. Keep up the money balling in Oakland. And, sorry you have to put up with another unsuccessful playoff year. All right. On that note, just to let you know, as I mentioned at the start of the show, one of the things we're going to start doing, we've got some writers lined up to do it. We've got our churros model and queue. One thing before we even get going on that, and I just want to take the hit for this. Last year when we did projections, we included confidence intervals on our projections, making the playoffs, over, under, etc. These were wrong, just flat out wrong. For as much as we go on dissing other models, Nate Silver, etc., we have to accept when we just messed up. I have no problem saying our projections based on the minutes and etc. we gave were well reasoned. Now, again, as I mentioned in my recent minutes piece and just in general, I think trying to predict wins over the entire season in the NBA is just a fool's errand, to be honest, because trying to guess minutes is the hardest thing to do. Trying to guess injuries and coaches is the hardest thing to do. And I just don't think anybody's ever going to be good at it. A point I've made in the past is even when we look at the good people, a common story is that John Hollinger beats Vegas. The regular error that is there is 6 wins, which means basically you need a 24-win window around every team to beat Vegas. And that, if you think about that, that's a huge spread, right? That's the difference between making the playoffs and, being a title worthy team in many cases. So it's just it's so random to try and predict the entire NBA that I think it's a fool's errand. On that note, we're going to do it. To Andrew Sutton's point in the comments, yeah, people like arguing about the season before it starts. It brings page views. So we're going to do it. We enjoy it. I'm just never a big fan, but I will say, last year on our confidence intervals on the model, we completely messed up. We will not do the same thing again. Thank you to all the people in the comments who called us on it. And on that note, yeah, we'll have those up. We'll see what you guys think. Mentioning again, we're going to the live show, so we'll start asking you your opinions on when you would like that to be on. And I think that's all I got. Brian, anything you want to take us out on?
No, I'll give you the honors.
Giving me the honors. I will say one last thing. The Nuggets are listed as low 40s in terms of over-under. Arturo's given me hope, so I may actually put a flyer out on the Nuggets going over this season. So we'll see how that goes. Let us know what you think in the comments about our over-under predictions, and we will see you next week.